Cozy Corner of Cinema. This is episode number 131, and it's being recorded on Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024 at 6:34 p.m. What a busy week it's been, trying to get everything done with absolutely no time. It's always such a hassle, which is why this episode is coming out so late. It is never ending. There are truly never enough hours in the day to get everything accomplished. If possible, it'd be great to just stop, get everything done, but then at that point, there's always still going to be something more. So we do what we can in the time that we have, including trying to stay on top of our artistic endeavors. Whatever that may be, and trying to find a healthy balance between it all, between making sure you're eating right, drinking right. You won't be eating a lot of fast food and drinking a lot of cola or anything like that, because then you get tired, you get worn down. What are you going to do? You drink coffee? Okay, well then now you're relying on caffeine, and you have another coffee, and then your teeth start to turn yellow, and you're still so tired, man. It's just ridiculous. So it's trying to find a balance between everything. As well as our own kind of personal sort of obligations that we have to abide by. So it can be really tricky. I really wanted to get that Peephole Pictures episode out this week or last week. Last week there was no chance it was going to happen. I spent the whole week just editing that the Slasher episode that is now up on the channel and is on Spotify as well, trying to get clips for everything. Getting the films, finding the clips, downloading them, finding the clip, but the parts of the clip that you want, making sure the volume is adjusted, finding the part in the discussion when the film was mentioned, putting it all together, fading it in, fading it out, making it all sound even. It's very time consuming, but ultimately the reward is worth the work. I should say, the work is worth the reward, because it ends up sounding better in the long run. It sounds more professional, and I'd rather do that. Even though I know that not everybody's gonna be sitting down and listening to something long like that, and I don't blame anybody. Time is so precious that I can't fault anybody for not. But I think for just longevity's sake, it ends up just sounding better in the long run. Really, but there's been so many films watched this past week. Really, it's just been the writing that has been falling behind, because my time has been just so hard focused on getting that episode out. I wanted that burden kind of off my shoulder. So now I've been kind of falling back into it and trying to get back onto the writing, and the reading is going fantastic as well. It's always just one day at a time, one word at a time, and ultimately it's just being persistent with whatever it is we need to, whatever it is we want to accomplish. But with that said, and like I said, many films have been watched. I'll talk about a contemporary film, film I mentioned on the show a handful of times before, which is Francis Ford Coppola's new film, Megalopolis. It was great this got a wide release, as wide of a release as it did. This is a big budgeted, self-funded dream project for Coppola, with a great cast behind it. It's an all-star cast behind it. It's an A-list cast, contemporary greats, former greats, kind of all put together. And this is a film that Coppola has been trying to, or it's been on his mind, I think, as early as Apocalypse Now. It may have even been earlier. This sort of contemporary Roman fable set in at that point, now contemporary sort of society, even though I think this is, I don't remember what year this is exactly supposed to take place. It looks futuristic futuristic in some of the designs of it, because this is going for a sort of, actually, even though I say it may be an altered kind of reality, not necessarily futuristic, because this Megalopolis really kind of blends a contemporary society with the Roman kind of outfits, some of the dialogue, some of the sort of these big kind of grandiose parties and spectacles, and it follows this character Caesar Catalina, played by Adam Driver, and first and foremost is that a lot of this is rooted in a lot of actual Roman figures, a lot of Roman history, like in real life. Caesar and Cicero, they were the arch enemies, and in this they are as well. Caesar Catalina, played by Adam Driver, has this idea for this utopian kind of society of called Megalopolis, a city that can live on well past our generation and kind of is almost self-sustaining in a way. Whereas Mayor Cicero, played by Giancarlo Esposito, is more concerned with the financial kind of aspects of it all. He's really more concerned about the right now, the modern day. And there's a great line in the film said by Caesar where he says, "Don't let the now destroy the future, or don't let the now affect the future," something to that degree. And it's a very grandiose looking film. I mean, it's a film where visually it has a very specific design to it. In that the entire film from beginning to end has a really great sort of almost kind of golden look to it. You know, sort of embodying this utopian kind of society. There's some great sequences early on with this like kind of gladiator match, and it's all very bright and it's all very colorful. And then you have this great kind of hallucinogenic sequence in it where it's this like kind of like red and greens, and it's a very gorgeous looking film. I've heard some criticism about the special effects, and to me that's very shallow, surface level sort of issues. I don't really care if I'm engaged enough with the film. I'm not really interested in the special effects and how realistic or unrealistic they look. But there were just some great touches throughout this. I just loved all the stuff when like there's one sequence where these almost like kind of bombs are falling from the sky, and the shadows off the bombs are against the buildings. You have people kind of like in silhouette, kind of crouching down. It's a very gorgeous looking film. There's a lot of craft and a lot of detail put into this, and it's gorgeously shot throughout. I mean, the thing with this film is that what I really respect most about it is that this is a film that Coppola is not interested in. I mean, at least I get the vibe in not being interested in it, knowing that it probably won't appeal to a wide audience. This is very much a Roman fable in that a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the performances are very exaggerated, they're very big, and some of it works, some of it doesn't work. And I think that once you sit with the film and sort of get the feeling that it's going with, that you're getting these heightened performances, you're getting these heightened kind of almost melodramatic sort of situations, it all ends up working together in a very fascinating way. I mean, I think where the film mostly faults is primarily just plot progression, in that I think the first half is a lot stronger than the second half. All the stuff with Adam Driver was excellent. I really liked that kind of back and forth. Really, all of his monologues were great in the film. The back and forths that he has with really all the other characters. When he's talking to Cicero and he gets romantically involved with his daughter, that's all great. I think he really kind of anchors the film, but everybody does well in their own right. They're all giving very specific performances to this. We have Shia LaBeouf's character Claudio as being very flamboyant and being very big with not just his dialogue, but with his costumes. Very, he's wearing like women's dresses at certain points, and he's like, wearing makeup and all that. Aubrey Plaza, who is playing a real kind of narcissist, a real, I've read a little bit about this in terms of the parallels to the real Roman figures, but it's a film that I think has to be really sad on, that it's one that's not going to appeal to a wide audience, but in that regards, I think that's totally great. To me, I look at a film like this and, I'm not looking at any reviews. I don't give a damn what anyone thinks about what I'm interested in people who I know what their opinions are in perspective, because I've already seen a couple. I get recommended some stuff on YouTube, and I just always click the don't recommend channel button, because I just see these ridiculous titles that are just like, oh, Megalopolis is a disaster, it's the worst film of the year, and I watched this so you didn't have to. And these are very shallow, stupid criticisms. I'm not even interested in that kind of stuff. It's clickbaity. The journey of Megalopolis, the film is so uniquely its own that kind of just discarding it with an ironic kind of one-liner or like a dumb kind of letterbox review. To me, I don't even bother any of that kind of stuff. I just say, hey, don't recommend to me, I move on. Because I have acquaintances who really liked it, and I have some acquaintances who didn't like it at all. And I'm interested in what they have to say, because I have actual context on this. And I know what what I feel about this. That's really, at the end of the day, what I'm most interested in. is my own opinion on this, and being able to bounce that off people who I respect and whose opinions I respect as well, more so than just some random kind of dumb clickbait YouTube video. By no means is this a quote unquote disaster. By no means is this the worst film of the year. This isn't even top 10 worst films of the year. Not even close, man. I think if you're calling this the worst film of the year, you haven't seen enough films this year. I've seen some truly terrible films this year, and this is not that. I'm talking about films that have no heart, no imagination, no nothing behind it. I watch this and I see Coppola's heart on screen. I see what he's trying to go for. Does it all work? No, of course not. I like I said before, I think the second half is where it does kind of start to not necessarily wane for me, because it's never boring. I think it actually moves at a pretty good pace, but really more so some of the plot points and some of the characters and where they go to don't totally work. And I think because you have with such a great cast like this, some characters do end up getting lost in the shuffle. I was making a joke. I'm like, I don't think Dustin Hoffman knows he's in this movie, because he really just kind of, comes in and out of the film very briefly, very randomly, to the point where I'm not even entirely sure what his character is doing there. But there's a lot of sequences as well that they feel very theatrical. They feel almost like a play. One of the sequences that I really enjoyed in this film is early on, when all these characters are standing on top of these beams high up off the ground, and Adam Driver is talking about his envisioning for this kind of, this utopian megalopolis, and everybody kind of gawking at this sort of idea, this ridiculous idea, which gives the line, "Don't let the now destroy the future." And it's a film that the more I've thought about, the more I've sat on, the more I just really like it, even separating myself from, because, Coppola's made some films I'm just not a fan of, so I'm not walking into this ready to love it, especially hearing some of the so-so kind of reactions to it. Subconsciously you don't want to let it affect you, but I know on the inside I'm thinking, like, all right, I know that this is not, this has not been universally praised or dismissed, so that's going to leave for some wiggle room, and I think that this film is more complicated in terms of someone's reaction than something shallow of just saying that this completely worked or it completely didn't work. I find this endlessly fascinating, and I think I want. It's funny because and this is the last kind of rant that I'll go on. So everybody talks about the end of the 70s era of filmmakers who were in complete control of their films, and we got all these terrific films out of it, and we also got a lot of terrible films out of it too. So it's just funny that a film like this comes out, and with a divisive reaction, it's almost made of a joke. It's like, films have to sit with you, whether or not you like or dislike them. Having an immediate kind of abrasive reaction, sort of like, "Oh, this film is horrible." It's like, what? This is the film that you think is horrible? If that's your God-given right, man. Don't let me tell you otherwise. But and this is very much a filmmaker's driven film. This is somebody who's putting his heart and his passion and his wallet on the line, and it's not about the fact. It was never going to make its money back from the start. There was just no chance. I think everybody knew that. It's this idea that, like, oh, it's a disaster, it's a box office disaster. It's like, Coppola's really, he's at the end of he's in the latter era, end of his life. If this is his swan song, then the way that I see it is, I think this is a really noble one to kind of go out of. He's pouring everything he has onto screen. I think his last great film was Textro. I think that was a really kind of great end to his career. But that's a smaller scaled sort of film. Like, it's a dialogue heavier film, beautifully shot in crisp black and white. This is a big $100 million film that he's been trying to do for 40 years now, and the fact that it's actually been realized on screen, even though not all of it works, and I'm not even saying this is a great film by any standards. I was extremely happy to be sitting in that theater watching this. There was never a second of this where I was bored or disinterested. It was always doing something cool or unique or just weird, and I had a really good time with this film, man. I have every intention of seeing this again theatrically before it leaves. It's a shame this wasn't being played in more IMAXs. I know that the problem with IMAX is that there are certain release windows that they're just not going to play, and I get that, because even recently I was looking at okay, so you have the recent Transformers, which got an IMAX release, and then I think like a week later is when the Wild Robot came out, like a week or two later. So for Transformers, that has no time at all, because now it's like, oh well, now the Wild Robot has to play, and you can't have. There's not many. I don't know if I've ever heard of a time where IMAXs were playing more than one film at a time. maybe very briefly, maybe if like a special kind of like showing or something. But in a case like this, there was no way that they were going to put Megalopolis over something like The Wild Robot, which is going to attract more people. I mean, the case with, Nolan will always be the exception. I think he'll always have the rule. If he has a film, because he has such a close relationship with IMAX, he is always going to get the priority. That's why when Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 came out, there was no doubt about it. And that's a big IMAX film, even though I think that was just shown in IMAX. To my knowledge, nothing about it was in IMAX. But if Oppenheimer's going to come out, then yeah, Nolan's going to get all those screens. So it's sort of like, I get it. And also, Megalopolis is not going to appeal to as wide of an audience as, The Wild Robot, which is, a kid's film. To my knowledge, I really don't know much about it. I know it's an animated film, and I get that. You almost kind of wonder if IMAX in these studios would ever release these films earlier just to be able to experience it in IMAX, even temporarily, like 2 or 3 weeks. Kind of as an incentive for IMAX, where it's like, okay, you can wait 3 weeks to go see Transformers, or you can go see it now in IMAX. But then again, IMAXs are not as frequent throughout the country, so that can be kind of tricky as well. And also, true IMAX is not like the AMC sort of general theater sort of IMAX. I mean, true kind of full, 70-inch IMAX, or 70-foot, I should say, IMAX screen. 70-inch, that's not much. But it's a wonderful film. I think that this is, this year, I compare it with this. I compare this to like Horizon Chapter 1 of just these filmmakers who are putting their money on the line, taking, this is, I think, is a much bigger risk than something like Horizon. Horizon is more of a traditional Western, but I think that people who always longed for the days of the 70s and want these filmmaker-driven films on a large kind of scale. I don't mean large like monetary. I mean like a large sort of theater count scale, because there's of course always as many great filmmakers doing much smaller films. But I think that films like these should not just be tossed aside and made the butt of a joke. There's nothing wrong with like joking around about it and stuff, but I think like at the end of the day, even though I didn't love this film, I got much more out of it than I have just a general kind of Hollywood movie. And those Hollywood movies are good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, when you see a good Hollywood movie, it's like, oh, it's great. It's good stuff. I've seen many good Hollywood movies this year. But a film like this, because I see Coppola's enthusiasm and his passion for this material, and just some of like the strange sort of things he's doing with this, and and just the fun that I'm getting sitting in this theater. Recently today I saw that that Lionsgate is putting this out on 4K soon. So this will be watched on 4K again. It's a film that I don't know if I'll ever grow to love, but I want to watch it again. And I want to own. And I think really just kind of, it really made me happy watching this, man. When I walked out of that theater, my immediate thoughts were being unsure. But as I've sat on this, I've really been like, you know what? This was never going to get great reviews. This was never going to appeal to a wide audience. But I, for myself, really got a lot out of this, and I really enjoyed this film. So Megalopolis, it might not be one of my favorites of the year, but it's one of my favorite contemporary films I've watched this year, if that makes sense. And I think that if you are on the fence of seeing it theatrically, just go ahead and see it theatrically, man. See it on a big screen. Even though I didn't get a chance to see this in IMAX, unfortunately, the scale of this film presents itself well to a theater. One of the theaters I had seen it in was on a newer curved screen, which was great, because the cinema the big cinema that I go to, when they had expanded it to fit a premium format screen on it, they ended up putting in 2 new auditoriums as well, and those are great. Those are beautiful, crisp, curved screens, and I had a great seat watching this. I just really felt the weight of the scale of this film. So very good stuff. I really enjoyed myself with this one, and I think that don't listen to the online, whether a film's getting universally praised or dismissed. I always said it before, make your own opinion on it. Don't be influenced by what people online are saying. Just universally dogging on a film, or universally just saying it's the greatest film ever. I mean, I can't even tell you how many films come out and they talk about, oh, it's one of the worst films ever, one of the best films ever. It's like, films need to sit, man. It's like films are like music. They gotta really just gotta sit with you. If films I liked 5 years ago, I don't like now, and vice versa, man. It's just they really gotta just let this sit with you. So I say give Megalopolis a shot. I thought it was real cool, man. Definitely, man. And now on the complete reversal on that, one of my favorite things I've watched this year is actually a documentary from 2002, I think it was, or maybe it was 2004. Let me get the name here. Or let me get the IMDb here, I should say. 2004, I guess it was a PBS documentary, but damn, this is really well made. This is Robert Stone directed the film Guerrilla, The Taking of Patty Hearst. Like I said, 2004. The true life story of the kidnapping, the bizarre kind of story of the kidnapping of Patricia Hearst in 1974. And I had known the main kind of outline of the story. I had seen Paul Schrader's, 1988 film, Patty Hearst, starring, who was that? Is that Natasha Richardson? And that was in 1988. So, obviously now the story is more complete. Well, maybe not more complete, but it's far more up to date with the aftermath of it all. But I'm not going to give away the whole story, because I think part of the fun of this, if you already don't know the story, is to experience it for yourself. But the main outline. Sorry, you're going to hear a little bit of a skip there. The microphone cut out briefly, but anyways, what I was talking about before is the main story here is that, so going from the 60s into the 70s, the state of America, with the youth, they're very unhappy with the administration at the time, with the Vietnam War, a lot of college kids and all that, they're getting mad, and it's, we see we see a lot of great video footage of a lot of these people sort of, at the time kind of clashing with the police, and people seeing the new age of America, seeing a new kind of dangerous kind of era. Anyways, there's this radical group, man, the Symbionese, the Symbionese Liberation Army, and they end up kidnapping 19-year-old Patricia Hearst. She's the daughter of, I think her father was an advertiser, or is the head of an advertising corporation. Basically, they kidnap her, and they're making these demands. They want, I don't know how much I want to give away, but they're young kids, man. I mean, I think they're in their 20s or something. They don't really. I mean, in retrospect, they don't really know. Well, again, I don't want to give away the whole thing. I'm trying to be. I think the less you know about it, the better. Anyways, I'm going to be really vague about some of this. But they kidnap Patricia Hearst, and the story from there goes from a bizarre twist into what happens after the fact, and maybe where some of the ambiguities now still lie, where some answers are not being fully, some answers are not being fulfilled. There were some great interviews with a couple of the people who were actually in jail. That was, I think it was Russ Little and Michael Borton. Those are the two names first on the IMDb. I may be incorrect about that, but they were in jail at the time. They were seeing kind of what's going on with this, and they were talking about the Symbionese army, the Liberation Army, trying to get them out, and Patricia Hearst being a result of that. And it's really it's interesting, because I had seen the Paul Schrader film, so I'd known the main kind of part of the story, but I basically totally forgot what happened after the fact, because it is a story really in three parts, which is the first part, which is what leads up to the kidnapping. The state of America, sort of these radical groups kind of this radical group kind of rising, then the kidnapping itself, and then the gradual shift in what's going on with the kidnapping, and then the third part of the story, which is what happens after the fact. And I say after the fact, meaning what happens with a complication in the kidnapping, to say the least. I think the story is pretty well known at this point, but if you don't know it, I think it actually is kind of more enjoyable to not see what's coming, because it just kind of makes you, even when I'm watching, I know the story, and you're still like, what the hell is going on here, man? Like, is this an act, or is this like, what is happening here? But it's a great documentary, man. It's one that I just found myself. It's just one of these great documentaries I found myself so engaged by. The way that it's all cut together, this great footage. I mean, the footage alone is wonderful to look at, and the interviews as well, especially with some of the people who were maybe more confident then about. Their position politically and their position sort of in these, being a young kid looking back and sort of where their lives are at now and sort of being more concerned with, they talk about how one of the guys is like, this stuff matters, but I'm more concerned now, paying my mortgage and my family and all that. And it's interesting kind of to see a lot of that kind of generation of these like really kind of angry kids and these hippies and then sort of what they would, not all of them, but what they would sort of turn into becoming like almost their parents in a way, or being more, maybe having these same ideas, don't get me wrong, but also kind of more, when you're younger, you have such extreme takes and everything, and whatever that might be, whether it's films or politics or anything like that, you seem to kind of think that you know everything and think that you got it all figured out, but in reality, you really don't. This is just one part of your life that's gonna mold you into the ever-changing person that you are, and they talk about that with this liberation group, talking about how they really just, they really didn't know what they were doing. They were really kind of clueless. There's like one great section, which I don't remember if the film even touched on or not. I only seen it once. I don't really remember. But talking about how they want demands for, because unrealistic demands, they want all the food like in the grocery stores they put out so everybody can have it, and the problems that with that plan, they try to reach a middle ground, and the plan just, it doesn't, it really is what would have happened in that situation, and how the group, the Symbionese, they, instead of kind of admitting that their plan wasn't really thought out, that they instead blamed the means of what had happened and that the food wasn't good enough. It's really one of these things like they didn't really they weren't very clear in their end goal, besides having these very unrealistic sort of, this young kind of idea of the way things that should be. I mean, I think rooted in, in good morals, but maybe not rooted in a realistic execution. But it's just a really solid unfolding story, and it makes made me want to rewatch the Paul Schrader film, because I remember the performances being good, and the way that Paul Schrader shot it was good as well. The fact that there's so much of the first half, or the first act, I should say, that's really kind of POV. These shots in the closet that she was being kept in, kind of going from darkness to light. And actually, speaking of Paul Schrader enough, I'll talk about actually briefly another one of his films that I just watched today. Another true story, which I think may not be as close to real life, but should also be mentioned at least briefly, kind of in the same conversation, is Autofocus from 2002, based on the true story of Bob Crane, who was from Hogan's Heroes, but he is a bit of a playboy. He's going out there. He's sleeping with these girls, at first kind of apprehensively, but gets mixed up with this guy, John Carpenter, played by Willem Dafoe, who's really into kind of contemporary video technology. So they're recording a lot of their, affairs. They have this whole kind of, taking pictures and all that. And the sort of the downfall of his career, the downfall of his life and of his marriage. It's a very fascinating story in the way that what Paul Schrader's 21st century work can be sort of hit or miss, but I think this is one that is not, at least I don't really hear it brought up a whole lot. So it's kind of a gamble. I think Paul Schrader has enough films that really aren't talked about in the way that are not necessarily even hidden gems, but are you kind of wonder why they're not in the conversation more. Films like like this, or The Comfort of Strangers, to a certain extent. I don't think that film totally works, but I think enough of it works. Light Sleeper, I think it's well known enough, but still, unless you know about it, I think that is still kind of put by the wayside. But either way, man, I would recommend that documentary, Guerrilla. I watched it on Tubi, but I think it might be off Tubi now, so you'll have to kind of, you can probably find that pretty easily, especially if it's a PBS documentary. There's got to be something there. But either way, that's gonna wrap it up for this one. Finally got this episode out, so that's actually wonderful. I'm gonna finish off this water, get some food in me. You guys just take care, man. Really, just kind of stay focused, stay on the plan of getting all your stuff done, all your work done, and really just kind of make the most of the time that you got, man. It's a really kind of wonderful life, and you really kind of want to live it to the fullest. So that's all I got, man. All right, thank you so much.